geopolitical competition is heating up in the Indo-Pacific region.
Thế kỷ 21 là cái thế kỷ của khu vực Ấn Độ Dương-Thái Bình Dương mà cái lưu lượng thương mại của thế giới đi qua đây là chiếm đến khoảng 70% và do đó nó chiếm khoảng 2/3 GDP của thế giới và chính vì vậy mà cái khu vực này rất quan trọng.
Southeast Asia has really been critical for Japan, and Japan to this day is still the biggest investor in the region, even though China is rapidly catching up.
In Vietnam, Japanese investment is transforming the fourth largest city of Da Nang.
Thì trong đó thì các nhà đầu tư Nhật Bản chiếm cái tỷ trọng cũng rất là lớn với 52 dự án và hơn 700 triệu đô.
In Jakarta, a major infrastructure project is underway, promising to alleviate a long-standing problem in the city, traffic jams.
So far, overall progress is about 43% completed. And for the station here, Mona Station, we already completed construction of diaphragm wall.
Japan has also unveiled an ambitious plan to accelerate an energy transition in Southeast Asia.
Thì dự kiến là cái phát triển về điện năng của Việt Nam hiện nay thì trung bình là khoảng 10% một năm.
In an era of great power rivalry, how will Japan's strategy in the Indo-Pacific region impact geopolitics in Southeast Asia? A network of railways, roads, ports, factories, and power stations has been built across Southeast Asia. They're the outcome of foreign investments intended to enhance economic connectivity and cooperation. The strategy sounds familiar, but this isn't China's Belt and Road Initiative. Instead, they're part of Japan's vision of creating a free and open Indo-Pacific. The late ex-Prime Minister Shinzo Abe proposed the plan in 2007. It was only years later, during his second term, that he managed to kick the plan into gear.
アジアからアフリカに及ぶ一帯を成長と繁栄の大動脈にしようではありませんか。
But he was really focusing on this connection of the economies of the Pacific and the Indian Ocean to bring new prosperity to the region. But in order to do that, they needed to have partners. So in a sense, the free and open Indo-Pacific concept really predated the Belt Road Initiative.
The region's importance has intensified after the Trump and then Biden administrations adapted Japan's plans and tailored them to their geopolitical strategy. And because of this, some have called the Indo-Pacific strategy Shinzo Abe's greatest legacy. Japan's Free and Open Indo-Pacific, or FOIP, focuses on the confluence of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. It promotes economic development and enhanced connectivity between Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. Southeast Asia is critical to the overall plan.
I would say that the Free and Open Indo-Pacific strategy runs on two tracks. One is economic connectivity, and the other one is rule of law to structure relations among the regional actors. On the economic side, for example, you have now Japan being an architect of mega trade agreements, making a push with infrastructure finance. And on the security front, you see reforms to deepen the alliance with the United States and an all-out diplomatic engagement with Southeast Asia in an attempt to stabilize relations with China and also to diversify security partnerships with the UK, Australia, and India now receiving a much larger degree of attention from Japan.
A major example of a FOIP infrastructure project is taking place in Indonesia, the fourth most populous country in the world. Jakarta, the nation's capital, is one of the most congested places on the planet. In 2006, the Indonesian government signed a deal with Japan to develop the country's first mass rapid transportation system in Jakarta. The first phase was completed in 2019.
Currently, we are actually in the midst of constructions. The second phase is part of the North-South line. And so this phase is another 12 kilometers.
The $2 billion second phase is funded by a loan from the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA.
For the constructions of MRT, we were using the overseas loan from Japan with a special terms that requires us to utilize or procure a minimum 30% components from Japan. In our case, it comes in the forms of Japanese technology, especially in the railway systems, such as the rolling stocks, the telecommunication system, the signaling systems, and also the power systems. Meanwhile, the 70% of it consists of Indonesian components or others in the forms of our raw materials, our resources, human resources, such as the workers, the site supervisors, the subcontractors, etc.
A giant Japanese tunnel boring machine churns through the rocks of Jakarta's underground. Trains will run through these tunnels when they are complete, transporting tens of thousands of commuters a day, alleviating Jakarta's traffic problem. The tunneling work is led by Shimizu Corporation.
There are several issues or challenges. One of the example is one station is constructed in the middle of the street with heavy traffic. We occupy only limited area to allow the traffic.
The work must have as little impact as possible on the already congested roads of Jakarta, and the problems extend below ground.
Kemudian hal lain, proyek ini juga seperti diketahui di pusat kota juga terdapat banyak utilitas di bawah tanah. Perlu upaya untuk bisa kami relokasi terlebih dahulu karena akan terdampak untuk kebutuhan konstruksi kami di lapangan.
The engineers are currently tunneling along the edge of the grounds of the National Monument. The station here will be one of the most important in the city. It will be within walking distance of the National Museum, the National Library, and the Presidential Palace.
Here we the construction site for Mona Station. The length of the station is about 280 meters. The depth is roughly 20 meters from the ground level.
Phase 2 of the MRT's North-South line is expected to be completed in December 2024.
I would say that one of the challenge in Jakarta is actually how to make people use more public transportations. And the key for that is that the public transportation in Jakarta has to be well integrated.
Kalau naik MRT tuh enak aja sih, kayak jadi nggak perlu ikut macet sama yang di jalan raya juga kan. Terus dari stasiun KRL nyambung ke stasiun MRT-nya deket gitu.
The Jakarta MRT has already become an important feature in many of Jakartans' daily commutes. Japan is not the only country investing in public transportation. In 2015, despite Japan being the front-runner on the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail, the project was ultimately awarded to China.
So when Indonesia decided that, yes, we're going to take from China, for China, it's very surprised. At that time, China offered a cheaper proposal than Japan. It also offered 40% Chinese ownership and 60% Indonesian ownership, whereas in Japan, it's not allow, it's more sort of like business to business without that kind of like similar joint venture. And the Chinese agreed that they don't need government guarantee on financing, whereas Japan still wants the Indonesian government to provide financial guarantee. And the second aspect, aside to the financial aspect, is the technical aspect. The Chinese investors, they have agreed to provide technology transfer, whereas from Japan's proposal, there's no clear technology transfer or any training possibilities.
Despite Japan's lost deal, it continues to make other big investments. One of them in a very important area. In November 2022, the United States, Japan, and other countries announced the Just Energy Transition Partnership to help Indonesia in keeping within the 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming limit. An estimated $20 billion of public and private financing will be mobilized over a 3 to 5 year period.
As we accelerate our investment in speedy transition to cleaner future, to meet the climate crisis head on, we have to make sure that they benefit people everywhere, not just in the larger countries. And that's why we're proud to partner with Indonesia and Japan under both our colleagues' unflagging leadership from both of them, together with a broad coalition of countries to create the Just Energy Transition Partnership.
I think on the surface, it is a very important initiative to be supported. It will help Indonesia a long way to push for energy transition and also secure green development in Indonesia. But I think so far the concern is how to integrate this initiative into Indonesia's overall restructurization and also reform in the energy sector.
In 2021, Japan announced a separate scheme, the Asian Energy Transition Initiative, pledging $10 billion to help ASEAN nations lower carbon emissions. The initiative hopes to spur investments in clean energy. Countries in the region have agreed collectively to generate at least 23% of their energy needs from renewable sources by 2025. Another area of focus for Japanese investments: supply chain resilience. Japanese investments are enabling a 400-year-old stone carving tradition to remain a relevant and viable business. And amidst growing competition between the US and China for semiconductors, Japanese investment is transforming a Vietnamese city into an emerging electronics powerhouse. Japan has a strategy known as the Free and Open Indo-Pacific, or FOIP. As part of this, it plans to invest in an economic bloc with two main trade routes in Indochina. The East-West Corridor aims to build a large economic bloc along a 1,700-kilometer land route from Vietnam to Myanmar via Laos and Thailand. From there, access can be gained to India over the Bay of Bengal. The Southern Economic Corridor enhances trade development from Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam through Cambodia and also links to Myanmar. Da Nang, Vietnam's fourth largest city, is a major stop on the East-West Economic Corridor. This city has consistently topped Vietnam's Information and Communications Technology Index rankings. And now it wants to turn itself into an ASEAN Silicon Valley. And Japan has been the leading investor in helping to turn that vision into reality.
Khu công nghệ cao Đà Nẵng được thành lập vào năm 2010 với diện tích 1.129 ha với đầy đủ các cái phân khu chức năng. Hiện tại thì khu công nghệ cao Đà Nẵng đã thu hút được cả 26 dự án với vốn đầu tư gần 1 tỷ đô la. Trong đó có nhiều nhà đầu tư đến từ Nhật Bản, Hàn Quốc, Hoa Kỳ.
This park is one of several industrial zones scattered throughout Da Nang City. The park is newly built, so 70% of it is still available for lease. and authorities are already planning an expansion phase. It's the availability of space in Da Nang that's helped attract Japanese companies, especially those with plans to scale up.
Hiện tại chúng tôi có 515 dự án, trong đó có 383 cái dự án trong nước với cái vốn đầu tư cam kết gần 30.000 tỷ và 131 dự án FDI với cái vốn là đầu tư cam kết gần 2 tỷ đô la. Thì trong đó thì các nhà đầu tư Nhật Bản chiếm cái tỷ trọng cũng rất là lớn với 52 dự án và hơn 700 triệu đô.
Japanese manufacturer Murata has 2 factories in Vietnam. The one in Da Nang is the company's largest. They make ceramic-based passive electronic components, essential in the manufacturing of communications devices and power supply modules for electronic products. The latest smartphone is equipped with around 1,000 multi-layer ceramic capacitors, and a single EV uses roughly 10,000 of them. Murata produces 40% of the global supply of these components.
Thì ở Đà Nẵng thì có điều kiện về cơ sở hạ tầng, bao gồm là có cảng biển và cảng hàng không, thì nó rất là thuận lợi cho cái việc là xuất nhập khẩu. Đồng thời Đà Nẵng cũng là một cái thành phố trung tâm và lớn nhất ở khu vực trung tâm của đất nước Việt Nam. Thì ở đây thì chúng tôi có thể là có cái lực lượng lao động đảm bảo cho việc là sản xuất.
In 2021, global semiconductor sales reached $595 billion, a 26% increase from the previous year. China made up the largest share of those sales. This increasing demand for tech components comes at the height of the economic rivalry between the US and China. To meet rising global demand, Murata is spending about $30 million on a new building at its Da Nang facility.
So even before the outbreak of the pandemic, Japan had actually been trying to push for Japanese companies to divest from China and either not necessarily relocate back to Japan, but relocate to elsewhere across Southeast Asia. Thailand and Vietnam seems particularly attractive. With the onset of COVID, Tokyo was one of the first governments to actually incentivize companies to actually provide some kind of financing to ensure that they were able to get out of China and reoperate either back in Japan or elsewhere in Southeast Asia.
And I think it sent a signal that in some areas where we could see greater tension between the United States and China and the imposition of export controls that could make it harder for some companies to continue to operate or supply China, that maybe that's a way in which you could facilitate adjustment and diversification. When it comes to advanced manufacturing and sectors that revolve around these new cutting-edge technologies, AI, supercomputing, industries like that, it's going to be a very different environment, and we're already beginning to see decoupling happening.
Vietnam has been the top gainer from the recent influx of companies relocating or expanding production outside of China.
Mong muốn rằng là Việt Nam có thể tham gia sâu, rộng hơn trong cái quá trình thương mại hóa toàn cầu, và thành phố cũng đã có những cái kế hoạch xây dựng. Chúng tôi sẽ tham gia cùng với các sở ban ngành để tham mưu cho lãnh đạo thành phố xây dựng một cái chính sách, một cái kế hoạch để có thể cùng với các cái doanh nghiệp tham gia sâu rộng vào trong các hiệp định thương mại thế hệ mới. Trong đó cái việc phát triển nguồn nhân lực chất lượng cao cũng như là có các cái chính sách phát triển doanh nghiệp bền vững hơn là những cái vấn đề mà chúng tôi sẽ trọng tâm trong thời gian tới.
The University of Science and Technology, Da Nang, has been a major source of talent for Japanese companies looking to hire. There are about 15,000 students enrolled here. The university works closely with industry players, designing curriculums that prepare students for the workforce.
Thì đối với chương trình các hợp tác với Nhật Bản thì trường Đại học Bách khoa từ những đã có cái chương trình công nghệ thông tin tiếng Nhật. Đây là cái chương trình đào tạo mà dùng để cung cấp nguồn nhân lực ngành công nghệ thông tin cho Nhật Bản. Ngoài ra thì nhà trường cũng có rất nhiều cái chương trình có liên quan đến cái đối tác Nhật Bản và được các doanh nghiệp cũng như các cái đại trường đại học ở Nhật Bản hỗ trợ.
Theo em thì quan trọng nhất vẫn phải là ngoại ngữ. Và trong thời buổi bây giờ là thời buổi hòa nhập, và thì sinh viên thì cần phải có cho mình một vốn ngoại ngữ tốt để có thể làm việc, trao đổi hoặc là học tập ở các môi trường đa quốc gia hoặc là các doanh nghiệp nước ngoài. Ở Việt Nam thì các doanh nghiệp Nhật Bản thì luôn luôn được chào đón và luôn gọi là được rất là coi trọng ở Việt Nam, bởi vì có cái môi trường làm việc chuyên nghiệp, họ có cái môi trường làm việc tốt, ưu đãi cao và có cái sự thăng tiến cũng cao.
Japan's investments in Da Nang go beyond factories. They also play an important role in developing critical infrastructure. Tien Sa Terminal is the gateway to the East Sea, or the Sea of Japan as the Japanese call it, and Japan's east-west economic corridor. The Japan International Cooperation Agency funded the terminal's recent upgrading. This is part of a master plan to enhance the flow of goods in and out of the city.
Da Nang plans to develop a series of key infrastructure projects, including Linju Port, railway station relocation, smart traffic system, mass rapid transit that aim to turn the central city into an international standard logistics center in the East-West economic corridor by 2030.
Container throughput volumes are already growing. In 2010, the terminal handled just under 90,000 containers a year. 10 years later, volumes have multiplied more than 6 times to 500,000 containers yearly.
Hiện nay thì cảng Đà Nẵng là có đến 7 bến, 7 khu bến, và với chiều dài của các bến là 1.700 mét. Và cái tổng diện tích của cái toàn bộ kho và bãi của cảng cũng như các đơn vị thành viên trong cảng thì lên đến khoảng 35 hectare. Và cái cỡ tàu mà tàu tổng hợp mà có thể là lớn nhất có thể đến làm hàng cảng là đối với tàu 70.000 tấn là giảm tải, và tàu container có thể lên đến là 4.000 TEU. Và cái sản lượng hàng hóa trong năm 2022 thì chúng tôi dự kiến nó nằm khoảng 13 triệu tấn và nằm gần xấp xỉ khoảng 700.000 TEU trong năm nay.
As part of the upgrade, the harbor was dredged to allow larger vessels to dock. A new breakwater was also constructed, along with other improvements to speed up the turnaround time of loading and unloading vessels.
Since we are the development agency for Japan, we do have to think about Japan, but we first think about how our activity benefit to the country. Our president always says every project first think about the people living in the country and all the nationals living there, and then to how it benefits to Japan.
Just outside of Da Nang City stands a village that's the center of one of the country's oldest trades. This is Da Nang's stone carving village, home to a flourishing 400-year-old craft industry. Giant marble blocks are painstakingly cut down to size, chiseled and polished into works of art. Chen Ven Swat is the owner of this gallery. On sale are Greek goddesses, Roman legionaries, and religious statues. But his favorite collection is inspired by Vietnam's Cham people, an ancient maritime kingdom. And it so happens to be the favorite of some of his overseas buyers.
Thì lúc năm 94, 95 đó là người Đức người ta qua nhiều, mà người Đức là họ rất thích voi. Elephant á, rất thích voi, cho nên là rồi làm vua đứng vua ngồi đũng lụa vua, Nhưng mà một số thì mình làm theo cái phong cách bây giờ, một số mình làm theo phong cách châu Âu, của người Champa. Là vị thần đó là phần của người Đức, là nó cũng phả vào một cái để cho hầu những người làm đó người ta tọt ra những bức tượng như vậy.
The logistics of the trade were once a major challenge. Marble is sourced from a quarry and trucked along the Hai Van Pass, a 21-kilometer journey across mountains.
Có nhiều khi đó mà chuyển từ Nghệ An về đây tới 7-8 ngày, về tới Đà Nẵng, tới vô xưởng mình là 7-8 ngày về đấy, không có hầm. Khi mình chuyển cục đó về đến đèo Hải Vân, khi lên đèo Hải Vân á, thì phải 2 người đứng phía sau này, mình phải cầm cái cai để xe nhích lên. Vì cái lúc đó là xe nó còn yếu kém lắm, mình nhích lên từng bước lên tới đó. Có nhiều khi là cả đêm suốt cả đêm từ trên đèo Hải Vân mà xuống lại được đến cái đèo bên đây bên của Đà Nẵng là rất khó khăn, nhưng mà
For Chen Van Suat, the roads are critical for him to ensure the steady supply of raw materials to carve statues. Investments in Japan's FOIT plan have also enhanced the last mile, the road connections between industrial areas and the ports. This means that exporting statues to Germany takes considerably less time than it did. According to the Vietnam Industry Research and Consultancy, logistics in Vietnam can cost the equivalent of 20% of the gross domestic product, double the global average. In 2021, the government announced that it would scale up the current 1,290 kilometers of national highway to 5,000 kilometers by 2030. It will also upgrade existing roads and increase connections to major ports, airports, and railway stations. As much as 70% of national highway projects in Vietnam are built and funded by JICA investments. And here is one of them. This is the Hai Van Tunnel. At just over 6 kilometers, it's the longest road tunnel in Southeast Asia.
Thì cũng có thể nói rằng là đây là cái công trình đầu tiên mà Việt Nam cùng với nước bạn là Nhật Bản phối hợp triển khai một cách rất là hiệu quả. Và từ đó thì chúng ta phát triển các cái đường hầm tiếp theo.
The first tunnel was completed in June 2005, followed by the second in 2021.
Khi chúng ta chưa có hầm Hải Vân thì cái việc giao thông giữa thành phố Đà Nẵng và Thừa Thiên Huế phải qua một con đèo Hải Vân, là con đèo mà nổi tiếng nhất thế giới, nhất Việt Nam về cái độ nguy hiểm và quanh co. Có rất nhiều cái vụ tai nạn thương tâm xảy ra trên đường đèo. Thế thì từ khi có hầm Hải Vân thì có phải nói rằng cái việc chúng ta di chuyển từ 20 km đường đèo nguy hiểm đó chỉ còn lại hơn 6 km. Và đặc biệt nhất là giải quyết được bài toán tiềm ẩn cái tai nạn khi lưu thông qua đường đèo. Thì các yếu tố đó sẽ thúc đẩy cái sự phát triển kinh tế hành lang Đông Tây ở khu vực Huế và Đà Nẵng nói riêng và trong khu vực miền Trung Tây Nguyên nói chung.
As Vietnam continues to develop, energy security becomes ever more pressing. The country's breakneck economic growth is putting pressure on its energy sources as coal-fired power plants continue to dominate the national grid. To hit global emission reduction targets, Vietnam will have to concurrently ramp up their renewables sector. Quang Tri is a province in the central highlands of Vietnam. These hills were battlegrounds during the Vietnam War. They're now home to wind farms, a growing number of them.
The Quang Tri Wind Power Plant project is the JICA's first project finance for a wind power generation project in Vietnam. It is expected to serve as a model case for private sector wind power generation project in the renewable energy sector in Vietnam. including those by Japanese and local companies.
Hydroelectricity is the main source of renewable energy in Vietnam, accounting for about 6% of the total supply, while other renewable energy sources like wind and solar account for less than 1%. As of 2021, Vietnam generates 16.5 gigawatts of solar power and 11.8 gigawatts of wind power. Plans are already underway to harvest more energy from the wind. There are currently 19 wind projects in Quang Tri province, with a total capacity of over 671 megawatts. Another 12 projects are under construction.
Thì dự kiến là cái phát triển về điện năng của Việt Nam hiện nay thì trung bình là khoảng 10% một năm. Chính vì thế mà trong tầm nhìn từ nay đến 2030 thì là Việt Nam sẽ phát triển thêm mỗi năm cỡ khoảng 7 đến 8 gigawatt điện. Ở trong đó thì với cái mục tiêu mà phát thải dòng bằng không vào năm 2050 thì Việt Nam sẽ ưu tiên phát triển các cái năng lượng tái tạo như là điện gió, điện mặt trời, điện sinh khối. Thì trong quá trình xây dựng dự án cũng như là vận hành dự án thì các cái đoàn kỹ sư của phía Nhật Bản thì cũng sang vào các cái giai đoạn mà xây dựng cũng như là vận hành để kiểm tra tiến độ thi công, rồi là cũng là trao đổi với các cái kỹ sư Việt Nam của chúng tôi về cái vận hành, về cái xây dựng và vận hành dự án, và các anh cũng rất là trong quá trình làm việc rất là nghiêm túc, cũng rất là chia sẻ các cái kiến thức, các cái công nghệ, các cái kinh nghiệm về năng lượng tái tạo của Nhật Bản đối với cái dự án.
The strong relationship developed between Japan and Vietnam has also meant the two countries have collaborated on more sensitive projects. The two countries have a history of security and defense deals. In 2014, they established an extensive strategic partnership. As part of the deal, Japan provided Vietnam with 6 used vessels to aid the country's maritime security. Over time, the partnership has strengthened. In 2020, JICA signed a deal to finance the construction of 6 Coast Guard patrol boats worth $347 million.
And now we are working for providing the Vietnam Coast Guard for the procure vessels, supporting and improvement in maritime rescue operations and maritime law enforcement. This aim is to enhance freedom of navigation. The project will contribute to the achievement of SDGs goals 14 and 16 and the realization of a free and open Indo-Pacific, which Vietnam government also aims to have.
The strengthened defense relationship between Japan and Vietnam shows that both countries have aligned their strategic and security interests.
Trước hết thì tôi nói là cái việc chúng ta có cái chiến lược phát triển kinh tế biển, bảo vệ cái kể cả chủ quyền của chúng ta ở trên biển, đó là những cái lợi ích chính đáng của chúng ta. Và để như vậy thì chúng ta có những quyền lợi chính đáng để phát triển quan hệ với tất cả các đối tác, để củng cố những tiềm lực của chúng ta theo như hướng đó. Và chúng ta không hề có ý định là phát triển những cái vũ khí hoặc là những cái công cụ đó để chống lại bất kể ai, ngoại trừ cái việc bảo vệ lợi ích của chúng ta. Thì tôi nghĩ rằng là nếu ai đó có phần nào đó lo ngại thì có thể đó cũng là một chuyện thừa thôi, bởi vì chúng ta không có ý định.
China is Vietnam's most important economic partner. But the two countries have competing maritime interests in the South China Sea. And this point of contention has been known to flare up from time to time.
Là ASEAN không muốn đứng về một phía bên nào ở các nước lớn trong cái quá trình và cạnh tranh giữa các nước. Và nói về đến những cái chiến lược thì như tôi cũng đã đề cập là cái đối tác Ấn Độ Dương-Thái Bình Dương mà đã xác định trên hai khía cạnh chính, đấy chính là việc đánh bắt cá trái phép và cái việc mà trao đổi thông tin đối với những cái vấn đề giải quyết thảm họa thiên nhiên hay là những cái vấn đề nhân đạo như cứu hộ cứu nạn. Thì trên cái khía cạnh đó thì về mặt những cái khía cạnh này thì có lẽ là Việt Nam cũng đã xác định cái việc mà đánh bắt cá trái phép thì cũng cần phải tuân thủ những cái luật pháp quốc tế, và Việt Nam cũng mong muốn tất cả các nước ở trong khu vực thì tuân theo những cái công ước của Liên Hợp Quốc liên quan đến cái vấn đề về đánh bắt cá ở tại khu vực Ấn Độ Dương-Thái Bình Dương.
I think what Japan offers more broadly is an ability to have a third way. So Japan is also caught in the competition between great powers, right? The rivalry between China and the United States. But Japan shares an interest with Southeast Asian countries to ensure that regardless of what happens between Washington and Beijing, that their own economies and their own societies are insulated from these competing countries as much as possible. So the Japanese approach to ensure that voices are heard, that there is a focus on investing in society is going to resonate a lot more with Southeast Asian countries moving forward.
On the other side of the South China Sea, Japan's investments are not only impacting economies, but also the lives of people living in a typhoon-prone country.
Grabe. Devastated na naman ang marina.
The Philippines is hit by an average of 20 typhoons every year. They cause major flooding, destroying property and uprooting lives. The growth of informal settlements and lack of adequate infrastructure add to the problem. Virginia Peralta's barangay, or district, is in Mandaluyong, the center of Metro Manila. She remembers the city's worst flood in 2009, when Typhoon Ketsana struck.
Itong lumulutang yan. Diyan lang siya, palutang-lutang. Panang tubig niyan, putik ang kapalit. Kaya ginagawa ko, inaabangan ko bumaba yung tubig, tsaka ako nililimas.
The Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, is working with the Department of Public Works and Highways to alleviate the crippling floods. Work is currently underway on the Pasig Marikina River. A team led by Japanese engineers are widening and reinforcing the river's banks.
We just increasing of the flood capacity of the river channels by dredgings and construction of the flood walls, the height of the diking systems. The flood control gate is regulate of the flood flow ratio to downstreams and other flow, other river channels. The purpose of to construct of the flood gate and sluice gate is to prevent of the backwater from the inland areas.
The project won't completely solve Manila's flooding woes. In extreme weather events, like a Category 4 typhoon, the river is still expected to overflow. But the mitigation system would reduce the extent of damage to communities living near the river. Residents would have to learn how to adapt whenever a flood occurs.
People should know which area has risk of the deep inundations areas. That's why the provision of the flood risk map or flood hazard maps is essential to save the life, even though after the phase 4 project.
JICA has arranged a workshop for residents. They have created a topographical map and asked residents to mark areas where they have experienced flooding. The information collected helps residents better understand the geography of their settlement. It also allows JICA to acquire historical knowledge of flood-prone areas from the residents themselves. These maps will be crucial in highlighting low-lying risk areas and to plot evacuation routes.
Siyempre, hindi pa tayo prepared nun eh. So wala pang ganito nun eh. So talagang bulaga. Nagising ka na lang, lumulutang ka na sa tubig eh. Lubog na yung bahay. Kapag siyempre, alam mo na kung alin yung high risk, alin yung medium risk, nasaan yung evacuation center. So halimbawa, yung evacuation center nandun sa binabaha, hindi na namin gagamitin yun as evacuation center. Hahanap kami ng iba.
Actually, talagang marami magbe-benefit dito sa ganitong klaseng workshop, no? Dahil ito ay isa sa dalawang malaking barangay na kinasasakupan ng bayan ng Cainta. At sa mga residente nito ay talagang marami ring magbe-benepisyo dahil nga dun sa tinatawag natin na yung mga flood-prone areas.
Japan is also investing in energy, agriculture, and health projects in the Philippines. And it has also given out official development assistance, or ODA, to the Philippines. The country has been among the largest recipients of Japan's ODA.
There are many studies that confirm its positive effect on economic growth. Japan is the largest ODA provider to the country since the 1970s. And is also one of the biggest investor in the country. So in our case, for example, the infrastructural development that Japan is funding is actually aligned with the medium-term Philippine Development Plan. So in a way, that contributes also to our economic growth and development.
Another ASEAN country where Japanese investment is really making a difference is Myanmar. Since the military coup, there has been an exodus of international investments from many countries, but not from the Japanese, who have stayed the course.
The latest developments in Myanmar has actually not deflected Japan from continuing to invest and being engaged with the current government. Tokyo's argument is that rapid withdrawal or complete withdrawal from Myanmar would actually do more harm than good.
Well, Japan worries about the human rights issues in Myanmar. They're worried about what's happened in terms of the junta, but they also have long-term interests in the country in terms of acquiring resources from the region, whether that's rare earth material or other materials, in building infrastructure to help it development, but also seeing it as an important geopolitical piece of the ASEAN puzzle. And because of its size, because of its resources, it really can't neglect Myanmar. And even though we've had political disruption there because of almost a civil war, that Japan still feels the need to be part of that and to try and wait out the political turmoil in that country so that they can go back and invest and try to help with building stability in Myanmar. But importantly also, ensure that China doesn't fill the vacuum that has been left by the exodus of Western countries.
Whether it's in Indonesia, Vietnam, or the Philippines, Japan's FOIP plan has brought much-needed infrastructure and economic growth. In a region where governments are concerned about the US-China rivalry, the free and open Indo-Pacific plan could act as a counterbalance.
I believe that countries in the region would benefit from a constructive competition between China, the United States, and Japan if this compels them to provide more development assistance, more infrastructure finance, public goods to address the pandemic. And therefore, we should encourage constructive competition. But there's one area where Japan does something that I believe China and the United States are not quite ready to do, and that is to really enforce, shore up rules-based trade. We're seeing China talk about globalization while it's actually pursuing self-sufficiency, and it's not opening much the crowning heights of its economy. And we're seeing the United States take a step back from trade leadership. At the same time that Japan is pushing forward with important trade initiatives like the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. So I think that when you put together the package of, added sources of financing in a more predictable way and in a way that protects and tries to encourage the supply chain that has been an engine of growth for the region, I think that's where Japan can make a difference.
As economic partnerships continue to grow and create bonds between countries, they influence the geopolitical landscape.
Đặc biệt hiện nay khi chúng ta đẩy mạnh hợp tác với rất nhiều những đối tác, thì những cái gì mà có lợi cho sự phát triển của Việt Nam, có lợi cho việc đảm bảo cái hòa bình, ổn định và phát triển ở khu vực thì chúng ta sẽ tham gia.
The existing multilateral framework actually allows Japan to cooperate with China together with countries in the region, be that Southeast Asia or East Asia. And the most important thing for that is Indonesia playing the leadership role in trying to push an ASEAN-based centrality for all this regional framework. So that's really the importance of having multilateral framework to provide space for broader cooperations that includes both China, Japan, as well as the United States eventually.
Japan is making a bet. It's investing in ASEAN not only for its own economic future, but also for ASEAN to become a strong and independent bloc. Its investments already foster greater connectivity across borders. The hope is that they will also bring stability in an era of uncertainty.